Well, guys, I got a really cool little German lock here. This is a Burg, and if you look closely, you can see it there on the weather protect cover. So pretty neat little lock. It's fairly light. It looks to be stamped steel, but I think it's more just for casual type security, not for anything major. Very cool little weather thing. It is spring loaded, but it's got little cutouts over here. So when you shove it up over the bolt and it kind of wedges a little bit, not completely open, but that's pretty unusual. Usually you got to find a piece of tape and hold those guys open. When you do open it up, you notice the keyway, when I flipped it over, you probably noticed it didn't go all the way through. There was no protrusion on the back to indicate that there was a little set point, and that's because this is a nasty little post lock. The post on this one is really non-standard. It's really difficult to get around, and they've intended it that way. You can't take anybody else's key and make a blank tensioner out of it. You have to use or have to have access to a Burg key just for this lock. So it is, I guess, a proprietary size, and that makes it kind of extra difficult for us to try to pick. I do have a key. Here's what the bitting looks like. So you can see it's a 5-lever lock. This one on the far left is the tensioning lever, and those other 5 little cutouts are for the levers on the inside of there. So it works beautifully. Now, when I slide it in there, first of all, notice that this is only riveted in place. There's no spring tension on that shackle. So as I turn it, it's locked, by the way, and as I turn it, you won't hear any clicking, and I'll be quiet in a second. You won't hear any clicking or levers falling, and they certainly won't pop open. Absolutely smooth, but at that point, obviously it is open. Now, when we look inside of there, you can see on the left side, you can see the tensioning lever, and you'll also see a little copper plate in there covering up all of the other levers. So that, I think, is probably to prevent us from looking inside of the shackle hole on a lock that we see open and trying to find some way to decode it. So they've at least covered that up as well. There's also a cutout in this shackle. Again, something unusual, and they wouldn't do that if they didn't have a reason. So I'm going to go ahead and lock it back up and watch what happens here. A little pin will pop out, and that pin obviously goes through that shackle. So solid piece of steel there, probably just as thick as this rivet. So when this is locked, there's no way we're going to be able to shim it or anything going in through the keyway here. So very, very cool little lock. Now the trouble comes in, how do we pick it? Because there's not a lot of room to work here, and it's going to be pretty difficult to tension. Let me clamp this up, because this is the type of lock that really does take 2 hands in order to pick, and I'll show you the 2 ways I've come up with to tension these guys. All right, that ought to hold it. It's still locked. All right, guys, the easiest way to tension these locks, particularly with a weird size post like this, is to use a manufacturer-issued key. If you can get a blank key, this one's not blank, this is the one that came with it, but they'd all be cut to the same height. File everything down except the last post. Now, I had 2 keys with this, and I filed off everything, and that's kind of what you're looking for. The walls on this are fairly thick, so when you file off enough in order to get your tool in there, there's still going to be plenty of strength. Besides, that center shaft is going to be filled up with that post. So again, you slide it in there, and I think you can now see why you file off the top. So you got room to get that wire, and you see that post sticking up just a little bit. All right, but we don't really run into these very often, and these keys can be hard to find if you don't know where the nearest Burg dealer is. So there's other ways to do that. The best way I found is just get yourself a piece of wire and bend it into a Z shape. One side of the Z is going to obviously be your tensioning handle. The other side is going to be your tensioner. And what I usually do is I cut that about the same length as the keyway, just about like that. I found that is usually a good starting point. So slide them in, and you just kind of feel around until you feel something spring-loaded, and that would be about right there. Now, a lot of times when you do this, you can actually see the shackle moving. It's not happening here, but when you hit the tensioner, you'll see that shackle kind of bump up a little bit. This one's not doing it, but I can definitely feel the spring-loaded tensioner right about there. So I'm going to use my left hand. As I said, picking these locks takes 2 hands. And now I'm going to hold the tension. And now, because this is on the right side and he's like kind of wedged in there against the tensioner, I can use him as a pivot point. So I'll slide the tool in, and I'm just going to rest him right up against that while I maintain tension. And that way he doesn't slide around that circular keyway. Make sure that's oriented correctly. Move him around. and see what we got here. Looking for a binding lever. There's one. I felt that whole thing turn. Nope, didn't get it. So I got a false set. I don't know if these have false gates in these levers or not, but maybe my tensioner slipped a bit, but he still seems to be holding. There's another one. There's another one. The rest of these guys are springy. That's a binder, but I'm almost afraid to put too much tension on them. There's another one. So that was 4. So I'm looking for one more. And there he is. And there we go. We got to open on this Burg. Anyway, guys, you really don't need a special key to get in here. Just a simple piece of bent wire is often enough to get in there. Now, if you can't find some way to wedge it in there, I was also experimenting with using, I don't have a pair of vice grips here in front of me, but if you just take a pair of vice grips and you kind of set them right up in there and you clamp them down, you can use the vice grip as your pivot point so that your tool doesn't roll around that circular keyway and fall into the gutter. So pretty easy to do, just a small set of vice grips and a piece of bent wires, generally enough to get in here without any expensive proprietary keys. Anyway, guys, appreciate your time. Stay safe. Stay legal.